They say confession is good for the soul. That's what I told myself 6 months ago when I decided to tell Ryan about the affair. Honesty would cleanse us, I thought. We'd work through it together, come out stronger. I'd read the articles, seen the TED Talks. Couples survive infidelity all the time. Some even claim it made their marriages better. What I didn't know was that some confessions don't lead to forgiveness. Sometimes they unlock something that was better left buried. Sometimes the nice guy you married has been keeping his own secrets, and your betrayal becomes his permission slip to stop pretending. I'm writing this from my sister's basement in Pittsburgh, 2,000 miles from the house in Albuquerque where Ryan still lives. Where he's probably sitting right now in the leather chair I bought him for Christmas, monitoring my credit cards, tracking my phone, sending another email to my new employer about my character issues. The irony isn't lost on me. I cheated. I broke our vows, shattered trust, became everything I'd once judged other women for being. But Ryan? Ryan became something worse. He became the monster he'd been hiding for 12 years, and my guilt became the chains he used to keep me bound. Let me start at the beginning. Not the affair. That was just a symptom. The real beginning was the day I married Ryan Fitzgerald, thinking I'd won the lottery. We met at a charity 5K in Portland. I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first real job at a nonprofit. He was 28, established, the kind of guy who owned property and had a retirement account. When he asked me out after the race, I couldn't believe someone so put together was interested in me. Ryan was everything my previous boyfriends weren't. Stable where they'd been chaotic. Gentle where they'd been rough. He opened doors, remembered anniversaries, never raised his voice. My friends called him Unicorn, the mythical nice guy who actually existed. "You're so lucky," my roommate said after meeting him. "He actually listens when you talk." The bar was that low, and Ryan cleared it easily. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. Traditional proposal at sunset on the beach, one knee, the works. I said yes immediately, already imagining our life together. The good man, the stable home, the 2.5 kids who'd grow up with a father who attended every soccer game. The first 10 years were exactly what I'd expected. We bought a house in Albuquerque for his job. Had 2 kids, Sophia, now 11, and Max, now 9. I stayed home with them while Ryan climbed the corporate ladder at his tech company. We were the family in the Christmas card photos, matching sweaters and genuine smiles. But somewhere around year 10, the shine wore off. Not dramatically, just a slow dulling, like silver tarnishing so gradually you don't notice until it's black. Ryan was still a good father, still a stable provider, still never raised his voice. But our conversations became transactions. Our sex life became scheduled. Our marriage became an efficiently run business where I was junior partner. Date night meant the same restaurant every second Friday. Romance meant flowers from the grocery store every Valentine's Day. Intimacy meant missionary position every Saturday night, 11 p.m., lights off, finished by 11:15 so he could get his full 8 hours of sleep. I tried to spark things up, suggested new restaurants. Why mess with what works? Bought lingerie. That looks uncomfortable. Planned surprise trips. I need advance notice for PTO. Every suggestion met with logical rejection. Every attempt at spontaneity scheduled into submission. I felt like I was slowly suffocating in beige. Enter Derek. He was the contractor renovating our kitchen. Yes, I know how that sounds. Bored housewife, hot contractor. Could I be more cliché? But clichés exist because they happen, and what happened with Derek felt anything but typical at the time. He was everything Ryan wasn't. Impulsive where Ryan was measured, passionate where Ryan was controlled. He looked at me like I was fascinating instead of familiar, made me laugh with inappropriate jokes instead of discussing 401k contributions. "Your husband's a lucky man," Derek said one afternoon, watching me make lunch for the kids. "He knows," I replied automatically, then caught myself. Did he know? When was the last time Ryan had looked at me with anything resembling luck or gratitude? The flirtation was gradual, lingering conversations about tile choices, coffee breaks that stretched longer each day. The moment when he brushed sawdust from my hair and his hand lingered against my cheek. I should have fired him, should have recognized the danger. Instead, I started dressing differently on renovation days, applied makeup to work from home, found excuses to be in the kitchen when he was working. The first kiss happened on a Thursday. Ryan was at work, kids at school. Derek was installing the backsplash I'd chosen. Subway tile, classic and safe. Like everything in my life except the man installing it. "You deserve more than subway tile," he said randomly. "What? You're not a subway tile woman. You're marble, exotic, something that makes people stop and stare." It was a line. I knew it was a line. But when was the last time anyone had seen me as exotic, as worth stopping for? When he kissed me, I kissed back. And when he suggested we move to the guest bedroom, I led the way. The affair lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of afternoon encounters while Ryan debugged code at the office. 6 weeks of deleting texts and clearing browser history. 6 weeks of feeling alive and terrible simultaneously. It ended when the renovation finished. Derek moved on to another job, another house, probably another bored wife. I was left with a beautiful kitchen and ugly secret that grew heavier each day. The guilt was consuming. Every time Ryan complimented the renovation, every time he thanked me for managing the project, every time he touched me with his gentle, trusting hands, I wanted to confess. The weight of deception was crushing me, so I decided to tell him. Not out of nobility, out of selfishness. I needed the guilt gone more than I needed to protect him from pain. I convinced myself honesty was the brave choice, the right choice. That we could work through this if I was transparent. I told him on a Sunday night after the kids were asleep. Sat him down in our newly renovated kitchen, the scene of the crime, and confessed everything. The attraction, the kiss, the 6 weeks of afternoon betrayals. Ryan listened without interrupting. His face went through stages, confusion, understanding, pain, but not anger, never anger. That should have been my first warning. "Thank you for telling me," he said when I finished. His voice was calm, controlled. "I need time to process this." He slept in the guest room that night. The same bed where I couldn't finish the thought. For 3 days, Ryan said nothing about my confession. Went to work, came home, helped with homework, ate dinner. But he watched me. Not obviously, just a new weight to his attention. Like he was cataloging my movements, filing away data. On the 4th day, he sat me down. Same spot where I'd confessed. "I've thought about it," he said. "And I want to work through this. For the kids. For our marriage. But there need to be changes." Relief flooded me. "Of course. Anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need." "Good. First, you'll give me all your passwords. Email, social media, phone, everything." Reasonable, I thought. Trust needed rebuilding. "Second, we'll install tracking apps on your phone." "I need to know where you are." Still reasonable. I'd broken trust. "Third, you'll close your personal bank account. All finances will be joint, all purchases transparent." A flutter of unease, but I'd hidden expenses during the affair. This made sense. "Fourth, we'll install cameras in the house for security." Cameras? I need to feel safe in my own home, Rebecca. "You brought another man into our bed. I need to know who comes and goes." Rebecca. I'm changing my name for this story, obviously. Using Rebecca because it means captive. Fitting. I agreed to everything. What choice did I have? I'd cheated. He was being generous by not divorcing me immediately. The changes started small. The tracking app that pinged my location every 10 minutes. The joint Facebook account because married people shouldn't have secrets. The cameras in every room except the bathrooms. For now, he said. But small changes accumulated. The credit cards in my name were canceled. Simplifying our finances. My car was traded for one with built-in GPS, better for the family. My phone plan switched to one he controlled. Family plans are cheaper. Each change came with reasonable explanation, each restriction framed as protection or financial wisdom or family values. I agreed because I was guilty, because I'd forfeited my right to privacy when I'd invited Derek into our bed. My friends started noticing at the 3-month mark. "Why didn't you respond to my text?" Sarah asked at school pickup. "Oh, Ryan monitors my phone now. He must have deleted it." Her face went still. "He monitors your phone?" "We're working through some trust issues," I said, hating how weak it sounded. "Rebecca, that's not normal. That's controlling." "I had an affair," I reminded her. "This is the consequence." But consequences, I was learning, could become cages. The bedroom was where Ryan's control took its darkest turn, where the nice guy mask dropped completely, replaced by someone who used my guilt as a weapon of degradation. "You seemed to have no problems being adventurous with Derek," he said one night, standing over the bed. "Surely your husband deserves the same enthusiasm." I'd never told him details about Derek, but somehow Ryan knew, or imagined, and those assumptions became demands. Things I'd never done in 12 years of marriage were suddenly expected, required, part of my atonement. "I'm tired," I tried one Saturday. "You weren't tired on Thursday afternoons with him." Always calm. Always that reasonable tone that made refusal seem unreasonable. This is what rebuilding trust looks like, Rebecca. Unless you'd prefer to discuss this with a judge during custody hearings? So I complied. Became someone I didn't recognize in our bedroom. Performed acts that felt like punishment disguised as passion. He never forced me. Ryan was too smart for that. He just made it clear that sexual compliance was part of my penance, that saying no meant I wasn't really sorry, wasn't truly committed to saving our marriage. The worst part was his documentation. I'd catch glimpses of his phone, see him making notes, dates, times, what I'd agreed to, building a case that I was a willing participant in whatever narrative he might need later. "You're recording this?" I asked once, horrified. "Just keeping track of our progress," he said. "Therapy homework, document the positive changes." But I knew better. Knew he was creating evidence that I was an eager participant in my own degradation. That if I ever tried to leave, he'd have proof that I'd been enthusiastically making up for my betrayal. Who would believe coercion when he had dated notes of my compliance? Ryan's monitoring intensified. He'd installed software on my laptop that recorded every keystroke. Set up alerts for certain words. Derek's name, obviously, but also words like divorce, lawyer, help. "Who's Michael?" he asked one evening, holding my phone. "The kid's dentist. We have an appointment Thursday." "You called him Mike in the text. That seems familiar." "That's what his receptionist said to call him." "Don't. Professional boundaries matter." He started coming home for lunch. Random times, no warning. Said he missed me, but really he was checking. Making sure I was where the tracker said, doing what I'd claimed. The cameras were worst. Knowing he could watch me from his office, pull up any room, any moment. I'd catch myself performing normalcy, reading in view of the living room camera, cleaning within sight lines, proving I was being good. "You're paranoid," he said when I mentioned feeling watched. "Guilty conscience, maybe?" "I don't have time to monitor you all day. The cameras are for security." But I'd seen his laptop, multiple screens of our house, live feeds he kept minimized while working. I was his reality show, and he was always watching. 6 months in, I tried to push back. "I think we should dial back some of the monitoring," I said over dinner. "I've been completely faithful." "Maybe we could start rebuilding trust." Ryan set down his fork carefully. Never dramatic, never loud. Just that careful control that had started to terrify me more than any shout. "Trust?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You want to talk about trust? Should I tell the kids about Derek? About what Mommy did in the guest room while Daddy was at work? Ryan, please. Or maybe your parents would like to know. Your sister, I have the texts, you know. Screenshots of every flirty message, very detailed. My blood went cold. You said we were working through this. We are. This is what working through it looks like for me. Unless you'd prefer the alternative? Divorce would be messy. Courts would need to know about the affair. Custody evaluations would be thorough. The threat was clear. Stay in the cage or lose everything. I stayed. The next year passed in monitored moments. Ryan had opinions on everything now. My clothes. That's too revealing for school pickup. My friends. Sarah is divorced. She's a bad influence. My job search. Why work when I provide everything? But it was the subtle erosions that hurt most. How he'd forget to pass along messages from my sister. How my laptop would mysteriously have technical problems whenever I researched apartment listings. How the joint bank account would have holds on it right when I needed gas money, forcing me to ask him for cash. You're being paranoid, he'd say when I brought it up. I'm trying to protect our family. Would you prefer I just served divorce papers? Took the kids? I'm sure Max would love to know why Mommy and Daddy are splitting up. Always the threats wrapped in concern. Always the children as leverage. The isolation was systematic. Friends stopped calling after too many declined invitations, too many texts that went unanswered because Ryan deleted them. Family gatherings became tense affairs where I performed the role of grateful wife under his watchful eye. Your sister asked if you're okay, my mother mentioned during Thanksgiving. She says you never respond to her messages. Just busy with the family, I said, feeling Ryan's hand tighten on my shoulder. She's been so devoted to making things right, Ryan added, smiling at my parents. Really committed to being a better wife and mother. My parents beamed, proud of their daughter's redemption. They didn't see his fingers digging into my shoulder, the warning in his grip. He'd become the opposite of the man I'd married. Where he'd once been passive, now he controlled. Where he'd been gentle, now he wielded cruelty like a scalpel. But only in private. Only where the cameras he controlled could edit the footage. To everyone else, he was still perfect Ryan, the devoted husband who'd forgiven his cheating wife, the good man who'd kept his family together despite betrayal. I was the reformed sinner, lucky to be kept. You're different, my mother said during a visit. Quieter. Just focused on being a better wife, I said, aware Ryan was listening from the kitchen. She frowned but didn't push. Who challenges a woman trying to save her marriage? The breaking point came last month. Sophia, our daughter, had started asking questions. Why does Dad check your phone? Why can't you go to lunch with Aunt Sarah? Why are there cameras in the house but not at Brittany's house? 11 years old and noticing her mother lived in a prison. That night I made a decision. Told Ryan I wanted a separation. No, he said simply. That's not happening. You can't just say no. I'm unhappy. This isn't healthy. You should have thought about healthy before spreading your legs for the contractor. The vulgarity was new. Mask slipping. I'm taking the kids and staying with my sister. That's when niece Ryan disappeared entirely. Try it, he said, voice still calm but eyes cold. I'll file for emergency custody. Claim you're unstable, having another affair. The cameras will show what I need them to show. The tracking data will support my concerns. Your history of deception will speak for itself. That's not true. Truth is what I can prove. And I can prove you're an unfit mother who exposed our children to your adultery, who brought a strange man into their home, who continues to lie and scheme despite my generous forgiveness. I stared at the man I'd married, searched for any trace of the gentle runner who'd asked me out 12 years ago. Found only calculated cruelty. You've been documenting everything, I said slowly. the bedroom activities, making it look like I was the one who wanted... Wanted what? His smile was sharp. To be a better wife? To show your husband the passion you showed a stranger. I have months of documentation showing your enthusiastic efforts to rebuild our marriage, your willingness to explore new things, your commitment to meeting my needs after neglecting them for so long. The trap was perfect. Every degrading night reframed as my apology. Every compliance documented as consent. Every tear rewritten as passion. You planned this, I whispered. The monitoring, the control. You were waiting for an excuse. He smiled then, a real smile that chilled me. Everyone has darkness, Rebecca. Yours was selfish lust. Mine is methodical vengeance. You gave me permission to be myself when you decided our vows meant nothing. This isn't who you were. No, he agreed. This is who I kept hidden. Do you know how exhausting it was? 12 years of being gentle, understanding, never demanding anything? Watching you roll your eyes at my boring stability while I suppressed every darker impulse? You wanted excitement, Rebecca. Congratulations, you've unlocked the most exciting version of me. The truth of it hit harder than any accusation. He hadn't changed. He'd been unleashed. My betrayal hadn't created a monster. It had freed one. I left that night with a suitcase, told the kids I was visiting Aunt Sarah, knowing Ryan would spin whatever story he wanted. The tracking app screamed alerts as I drove away, his calls and texts escalating from concern to threats to promises of ruin. I'm in Pittsburgh now, fighting for custody from 2,000 miles away. Ryan hired the best lawyers, submitted edited footage showing me as neglectful, distracted, always on my phone. Texting Derek, he implies, though I'd been texting my sister for help. The kids video call twice a week, supervised by Ryan. They ask when I'm coming home. I lie and say soon, knowing Ryan records every word for court. My lawyer says it's an uphill battle. Adultery plus abandonment, leaving the home, plus his documentation paints me as the villain, which I was once. For 6 weeks, I was selfish and cruel and weak. But Ryan's been the villain for 12 years, hiding behind nice guy masks and measured responses. My affair didn't change him. It freed him, gave him license to drop the act and become what he'd always been, a man who needed control more than love. I think about Derek sometimes. Wonder if he knows the destruction our 6 weeks caused. Probably not. Probably moved on to another renovation, another bored wife, another afternoon adventure with someone else's consequences. But mostly I think about Sophia and Max. Growing up with a father who monitors and controls, who teaches them love means surveillance and forgiveness means imprisonment. I pray they'll see through it someday. Understand that both their parents were broken in different ways. My therapist says I need to forgive myself, that people make mistakes, that I've paid enough penance. But how do you forgive yourself when your children are paying for your sins? When your guilt became someone else's weapon? The nice guy I married turned into a monster, yes, but I handed him the key to his cage. My confession wasn't brave. It was selfish, seeking absolution without considering consequences. I thought honesty would free me from guilt. Instead, it freed Ryan from pretense. So here I sit in my sister's basement, fighting a war I started with a kiss in my kitchen. The subway tile Derek installed is probably still perfect. Classic and safe like nothing in the life it witnessed. Ryan's still in our house, still monitoring cameras, still playing the wounded hero who kept his family together. And me? I'm the cautionary tale. The cheating wife who learned that some confessions don't lead to forgiveness. Sometimes they lead to something worse than divorce, worse than loneliness. Sometimes they lead to the discovery that the monster was there all along, just waiting for permission to show its teeth.